Welcome, everybody. The fantasy formula is live ahead of qualifying for the Mexican Grand Prix. And after FP3, guys, I don't know what is up with the top four constructors on the grid. I don't know if we should go with Ferrari or Mercedes or Red Bull. Who's our second tier A driver? Zach and Terry, are you making sense of any of this at this point?
It is a lot of things, and I don't even know where to start, honestly, because there's so much to do with how much budget you have initially, of which two constructors you can afford. Straight away, it looks like McLaren definitely are now back into action after even I was considering at one point potentially looking away from McLaren. All of a sudden, it's just like, no, absolutely not. McLaren are a must in your teams. But then it's where do you go from there? Norris versus Verstappen potentially? Do you bring in one of those two as the 2 times option? It's all over the place.
Yeah,
Terry,
I'm not sure if I've got answers.
Let me ask you this, Terry. You've been the Red Bull whisperer all year long. Yuki Tsunoda seems to be back in the fight a bit. Is it enough to invest in the Red Bull constructor?
I still don't think so. I mean, I did consider it. Probably like most people, I probably tried about 200 lineups, it feels like today, to get to where I finally got to. But I still don't know. Turn 1 in Yuki just still worries me, if I'm honest. He's not got the best record here, has he? So I think he's a lot closer than he has been over the past few weeks, and he's certainly looking a lot more comfortable. But I'm not sure there's enough of a sway still to take away from 2 Mercedes drivers, 2 Ferrari drivers, that sort of things yet to go down to Yuki.
I think the three of us are going to be sweating it out all hour long. I can see even just the early posts in our chat here, a lot of folks unsure what they're going to do. So let's work on this together. We'll spin up some polls. We'll get some of your lineups answered. We're going to figure this out together. Got some friends in the chat here. Hi, Matt. Welcome aboard. Joe, welcome back. We've got Rebecca. Hi, Rebecca. All right. Let's jump right in with some of these free practice 3 times, because I think you need a little bit of context to some of the classification that we see here. Lando Norris needs no introduction. He's looked good all weekend. It goes back to Zach's point earlier that Lando versus Max is probably the question about who's going to win this race. Max was down in P6 because he started with a couple of quick laps. He was unhappy with his race pace simulations yesterday, went with that heavier fuel load, spent most of FP3 doing those race sims, and then had a couple of quick laps at the end, but didn't totally hook it up. But I think his pace is a lot better than the P6 that we're seeing here. Meanwhile, we've got both Ferraris up at the top. This is 1 year removed from Ferrari having a really good race at this circuit. And Piastri looking a little bit better. Not quite in the top 3 or 4, but he is at least in the fight now where we can comfortably keep McLaren on our teams if we have the budget and the interest to do so. Guys, let me ask you, was there anything that stood out in FP3, including Williams falling all the way down to the bottom 5 here, that stood out to you?
No, I think there's a lot of tyre data going on. We've obviously got that stepping compound, which I think is really confusing the teams. I think everyone's pretty clear it's going to be a 1-stop. I don't think many teams are going to try a 2-stop. I think they're just trying to see how bad the hard tyres are, is probably the best way to describe it, and whether or not the softs can actually hold on. Because that seems to be the big debate at the moment. The hards haven't got the pace, but the softs don't look like they got the longevity to do a good stint. So I think that's what's causing a lot of these times in here. They're trying different things in different fuel loads to try and see what the answer is on them.
And Terry, is there any word on Alex Albon? He had problems all throughout the session, including a power unit issue, multiple braking issues. Are you aware of Williams working on anything between now and the start of qualifying?
There don't seem to be. I'm sure they're working on something, but there didn't seem to be anything major. So they naturally obviously work on them and change setups, but there didn't seem to be any big sort of news at the moment coming out from it saying that there's a major problem with anything. So remains to be seen. I mean, they've got enough time to swap some stuff out. They might well do that. We've seen that before now, where rather than try and fix something, they just swap it, because they can do obviously before qualifying. So sometimes it's a bit safer to do that. So as it stands, nothing major coming out from free practice in terms of people with problems, but remains to be seen.
Another question from Rebecca, and this is one I wasn't aware of. Is there any word or problem with Alonso's car? Was he reporting issues in FP3?
He did, I want to say 16 laps. It was low, wasn't it?
It wasn't many. Yeah, it was
not many at all.
Okay, let's keep an eye on that because that could be one of those things where when the broadcast starts at the bottom of the hour, you could see people frantically working on a car and will he start the session chat start up? So definitely keep an eye on that because we're counting on Alonso for some cost cap gains this week. The other bit of news here for anyone who forgot, Carlos Sainz is serving a 5-place grid penalty for his incident back at Coda. So he should be starting toward the bottom of the grid with good opportunity for overtake. So the Sims have been very generous to him lately.
Yeah, I think my key takeaway from FP3 was it was one man. It was Lando Norris. Purely because normally I wouldn't swing or like sway so much in one direction or the other, but 3.5 temps, even in a practice session, is a lot. It's a lot to everyone else, and it's making me think that he's got some brilliant pace this weekend. But this is the issue with Lando Norris. He's such an awkward asset to have in F1 Fantasy. Like, unless you've got the highest of the highest budgets, he's so uncomfortable to fit. You can't have him and Leclerc with Ferrari unless you have the high budgets. Then you'd have to have Mercedes instead. You couldn't have Leclerc and Norris. You'd have to go Leclerc and Verstappen if you wanted Ferrari as a constructor. So it then comes down to how important is Lando Norris. And right now, bloody hell, he looks important.
And this is why teams like Zach's and Rebecca's are so powerful at this stage of the season. They're doing everything right. They've built up the budget to have flexibility. They've built up the free transfer so that there's a third this week and there's even more options presented to them this week. So I'm definitely jealous of those teams. I'm going to try myself to get that third transfer looking ahead to Brazil because I'm not sure what's going to happen, wet race or dry race, or how these teams are going to show up. So I'm looking to make 1 or 0 moves this week to make that happen. Gazelle coming to us from South Korea at 5 a.m. Thank you so much for watching.
That's a trooper.
Yeah. I feel bad now for complaining it was getting late in the UK now.
All right, let's look over at some of the betting lines here. It's so tight. Max Verstappen and Lando Norris, really just a razor-thin margin between the two of them. This goes to Zach's point earlier about how much Lando has closed the margin to Max since the initial lines came out after the U.S. Grand Prix last weekend. And then very, very tight in through here as we're thinking about what is the best second constructor if you're in between Ferrari, Mercedes, and Red Bull. You can see very little between Russell and Leclerc and Hamilton and Antonelli. And then Yuki Tsunoda a little bit back. I think there might still be some concerns about his qualifying form and some of his Mexican GP race history. So this is weighing into some of the calculus for me on which second constructor I go with.
To put a little perspective on the constructor talk as well, I actually want to bring it back to actually F1 Fantasy basics, like from all the way at the start of the season. That, in the sense of, we're in a situation where Ferrari, Mercedes, Red Bull, you couldn't really tell which one at the end of that is going to be the quickest of the bunch. So then it comes down to, you've really got to get that 2 times option right. I think because of how tight it looks in the constructors between those 3, yeah, you've got to focus on that 2 times because that's going to cover any losses that you get if a constructor gets 10 or 15 less points ish. So definitely for me, if you're looking at not being able to afford Verstappen because you've got McLaren, Red Bull, then potentially I'd recommend definitely going to McLaren and Mercedes to fit him in. Same for Norris, etc. So keep an eye on that because I do think the 2 times option is more important than the second constructor option right now.
Agreed. And that's in part because there are so many good second constructor options. This is the post FP2 sims down here. Let us know, chat, if the FP3 sims come out while we're chatting.
Apparently
not
they
a lot
are.
between these teams.
Try refresh that.
Oh, yeah, let's have a look. They are out.
Oh, please. All right, let's sort this out in real time, everybody.
Norris,
right, first thing that
heavily
sticks
favored.
out to me is this gap between Leclerc and Russell has tightened. Norris over Verstappen. That's new. Still lots of love for Antonelli and Tsunoda. Sainz a little bit off. I think he was up in the 8-9 point range in the previous sims. A little bit more love for VCarb. These guys were down in the 2 to 3 point range. And then looking at the constructors, 5 points between Ferrari, Red Bull, and Mercedes. A bit validating, though, for some of us that wanted to come off of McLaren. They should still cover most teams.
I think the big, not shock, we knew it was going to happen. But yeah, Norris, Verstappen to Piastri. It's a 5.5 point gap between the top two. And it's so annoying, like I've mentioned already so many times in this live stream. It's so hard to fit both of them in your team. So which one do you choose?
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing, isn't it? That's going to take a swing over a driver of the day or something like that, in there, isn't it? And that's the thing, isn't it? That's all we talk about here. We just talk about anything like that. We'll swing it between any of those top drivers looking at it, which is just down to pure luck, isn't it? That's what we're dealing with now when they're like this.
I just clicked on my team here and look at all these options it's presenting for me. A lot of McLaren, Mercedes, but we could have Verstappen, Leclerc, Verstappen, Antonelli with Tsunoda, Norris, and Russell. All of these teams are all within 3 or 4 points of each other. It's just the fine margins of a few overtakes.
And that's what I mean. That's a few overtakes, a DNF, anything like that. It's gonna either go dramatically in your favour or not, isn't it?
Absolutely. Terry Hakon's in the house. I'm sure he'll be happy to see you.
I was getting worried then. He's a bit late.
Welcome aboard.
Welcome.
All right. This is the time of the show where I recommend you hit that like button. Terry will hold your lineups all hostage until we hit the magical number of likes. So do be sure to hit that button if you can hear me. Terry, Hakan sent you a picture on Twitter.
I need to go have a look. I'm not the best at Twitter. I don't use it that much. I had to testify to that one. I tend to try and stay off there, you know.
We missed the opportunity for a special guest.
We did. We have to make sure we get it on there. I'll have to go and get it.
I will mention, so for the start of the stream, the first poll up was who will be your constructors in F1 Fantasy this weekend. And I will say 45% are going McLaren Mercedes. Now, I have to believe it is because it then means they can afford those 80 premium drivers, especially the 2 times that they want. 18% for McLaren Ferrari, 24% for McLaren Red Bull. So McLaren Red Bull still favoured, and other 12%. So that could be anything realistically.
The other could be folks that are still working on Williams. Williams now a tier A asset, so I'm a little less interested in them, especially with everybody having issues on the Williams side in FP3. I would probably move on to the likes of VCarb. They look probably the best of the rest this week. You can see that they have the tightest gap to the top 4 constructors here. And are a bit cheaper than Williams, too. Let's hit some questions in the chat here. What do you think of keeping a bit of budget in the bank to use final fix depending on the best qualifier? So if you've have that Verstappen, Piastri, Norris, even Leclerc flexibility, Zach, would you keep a little in the bank just to wait it out?
I would say if you've got the final fix and you're happy to stick with Verstappen and you do have that, it's about 2 million to Verstappen Norris. Yeah, 100%. That's fine, because that, I will say, that is the one scary thing about going over to Norris is it's a weird thing to say now, considering how we started this season. But where would you go from this weekend? Because we don't know if Norris is going to be the fastest in Brazil or any of the next races. So especially if you did stick with Verstappen, he's got that budget increase that will help you. Then final fixing to Norris, you'd not get any of those issues. Plus, you wouldn't have to faff about moving back to Verstappen at a track like Brazil, where we know what Verstappen's like there. So yeah, I like that idea. But again, it's all about if you have the budget. So if you don't, you might just have to risk it.
And it also depends on how you're using that budget. I wouldn't start Piastri, keep 3 or 4 million in the bank, and then final fix out into someone better. I'd start with that top 2X driver, emphasizing, Zach's point earlier about having that 2X driver really shine for your team. And if someone else deserves that final fix spot, put them in. If you need to take a haircut off of some of your tier B drivers, or if you've just been budget building and you have a little extra, that much is good. But I wouldn't start with a crappier driver, assuming you'd use the final fix, because you might get stuck.
Interesting comments about budget building. When are we stopping budget building?
I'll tell you, I think we've started pumping the brakes on it a little bit, but Carlos Sainz is testing a lot of us. If we come over here, you can see Sainz needs at least 7 points to not lose the maximum budget, but he's on that 5-place grid penalty. He's fixing to get probably 7-8 points this weekend with a few overtakes, and that feels pretty good compared to some of your alternatives in that 6 to 7 million range. So I think we're hoping he only loses 0.2 million, or maybe he has enough positions gained in a slow enough race. He gets a driver of the day, something like that. And he pops up here. But I think for me, I'm going to go all in on the points for Sainz. He's staying on my team.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. It does show it is a sign of the times that Sainz is. That is very much nothing to do with budget building, keeping Sainz. We know he's going to be in a good position to potentially score big points, so it's worth the punt. But then also it's the sort of thing where it's like, well, you look at the rest of the budget drivers and no one sticks out to me as someone I must have who's not increasing in budget, like Hulkenberg, Ocon, Stroll. Albon probably could get 21. We know what he's like, so I wouldn't even say he's one of the options that is toxic. So it's Hulkenberg, Ocon, Stroll. I don't think stand out more than Alonso, Behrman, Lawson, let's say. So that's why we sort of still go, well, you may as well go for the budget option because you're getting the same thing plus the budget. I mean, even if you go to the 80-year premium drivers, Leclerc and Russell are still nice enough, but it like straight away, like we saw in FP3, like I'm talking about Lando Norris now, even though he needs 76 points to go up 0.3 million, very much not caring about budget anymore. So yeah, there's a couple of things we're not looking at, but we're not just going to be sacking off it completely ever.
It's a tricky week too. The most likely drivers to go up in price in Tier B are the most expensive ones. Then you have Franco Colapinto, who you either have for budget enablement or you don't have at all. Then another relatively expensive Tier B driver in Behrman, and then a bit of risk in the middle. Nobody feels terribly confident about Gasly and an Alpine. Alonso's DNF'd 3 straight in Mexico and is coming off a DNF last week. And then we're into the likes of Bortoletto and Sainz again. So it's not as clear to build budget this week as it has in previous weeks.
Absolutely. I think this is probably going to be one of the big topics. Charles Leclerc versus George Russell. It's a tough one, isn't it? Because George, we keep saying has that ability and that knack does need to pop up. Ferrari Charles has looked quite settled and quite strong around here, hasn't he? To be fair, over the pre-practice sessions, it's one of those big question marks, isn't it? Over which one do you go for? Are those? Because I think most people are kind of now in the camp where they're choosing one of those two drivers, aren't they? Based on budget and what they can do.
Yeah, you're going to be going a bit on vibes because they're so close together. Only 0.8 points between them on the latest sim. Come over to betting lines. Russell slightly above Leclerc by about the same margin. So it looks like the experts in the math are pretty split on this. Like Terry said, Leclerc does have the history at this circuit, 2 straight P3 finishes here for Charles. So I think he could have a good weekend. For me, one of the things I'm trying to balance is not over-indexing on Russell in case something happens. So if I have the Mercedes constructor, maybe having Charles as my driver, and then vice versa. If I bring on the Ferrari constructor, maybe keep George on my team. That way, if something happens to one guy, you don't have a complete disaster.
Yeah, I think I'm swinging to more Leclerc purely just because, again, we're talking about now we have just had a whole chat about how budgeting isn't really useful, but not useful, but less useful. Where Leclerc Russell, it's a flip of a coin. Realistically, who's going to do better? So in my head, I'm just thinking, okay, cool. Leclerc's looked better in practice sessions, gives him a slight little bit more to him, and also he needs less points to go up 0.3 million. So I think just accumulatively, it just looks like Leclerc has the slight edge right now.
I like it, Zach. I think we might be previewing a certain Zach lineup in a little bit with Charles Leclerc. I'm seeing some hints there. But if we haven't already, I'd love to see it in the chat what you all think. Is it Leclerc or is it Russell for you this week?
Can we poll that, Zach?
I will, yes. So I'll tell you, we just finished the last poll.
Yeah, I'm intrigued.
2 times option-wise, 67% still think Max Verstappen is the way to go, with Lando Norris at 27%. So everyone still agrees mostly that Max Verstappen is the better 2 times option. Maybe it's just because of a budget limitations. I don't know. But yeah, Verstappen's still the favorite right now.
I'll say during FP3, Ruth Buscom had a note about some of the setup changes to improve Verstappen's long run pace, and she said it was looking really good in FP3 as he tried it again. And also, he's such a master tactician when it comes to a race like this, where you're trying to manage your tires, you're trying to manage just the heat going in through your power unit, just trying to get your stints right, manage the pace. I don't think he has to be aggressive in defending corners in this one. He just has to play his race, and he should be in the top 2 no matter what.
Yeah, Mexico suits that Honda engine, doesn't it, as well? Yeah, they've shown in the past that actually it's a track where they don't have to do the amount of cooling some of the other teams have to do, and as much as the sort of lift and coasting and stuff that some of the other teams struggle with here. Yeah, the Honda power unit for whatever reason seems to actually be okay going around Mexico without any sort of major worries on it or turning it down. You see, McLaren are using a very different cooling approach to what Mercedes is using. That always, we haven't talked about Mercedes engines, have we? Looks a bit different over an hour in free practice, doesn't it, to what it does in race pace and race trim. That's always a big concern going around here.
We've got to be very careful with that too. It might be a matter of attrition. We've had engine issues in recent years. We've had hydraulic issues in recent years. So a lot of things can give way over the full race distance. It's like a 70+ lap race. So just fingers and toes crossed, you pick the right guys that make it to the end. How are we looking on likes?
We are on 75 at the minute.
Oh,
so we're doing good. But we could do doing better.
Should we answer some questions, Ad? What some of these questions saying? Thoughts on moving off McLaren constructor? I think it's risky. I think McLaren will bank a lot of points.
I think I'm happy with McLaren. It would cost, it's going to cost you probably 2 transfers, one to go from McLaren to Red Bull, and then a second transfer to take the rest of that budget and do something with it. And then you might have to make another move. It just feels like a lot of moving around, and McLaren are ultimately okay as long as they're not bumping into each other.
Yeah,
exactly.
Especially now it's not a guaranteed, like after FP2 Verstappen win. With McLaren up there, if they get the race win, you'll lose way too many points not having them as a constructor.
Agreed. All right. Perhaps since we're at 75, maybe we can get into a couple of our member submitted lineups.
Yeah, go for it.
And we'll work our way back into everybody else's. Oh, good reminder. If you haven't signed up for the Russell's Rivals mini league, got some great prizes. This is the most prizes ever in a mini league because there's P1, P2, P3, but then 10 random winners will get a signed driver card.
by
I want to see Terry. I want to see Terry in those race boots.
Be rocking those, They'll be on eBay for the end of the day.
All right, here's our friend Rick. Rick has a lot of good options here. I think his current team is this Williams build with the 2 A-tier drivers on the left, but some unenviable transfer penalties, -20 and -30, just to move things around. We just talked about moving off of McLaren, but what do you do with Williams?
I think you've got to move off them into a decent constructor. I tried last week with V-Carb as a bit of an experiment, see if that made a difference. It didn't. So for me, putting it bluntly, but I think you get too much points with having the 2 constructors, don't you? It makes up for a lot of problems. Obviously, providing something doesn't go wrong with those constructors. But I think if you look at the difference between having Williams and say Mercedes in there, then actually, I think that I would quite happily switch to a build which has McLaren Mercedes, for example, than trying to risk it all to have an extra A-tier driver in there.
That's exactly what I was thinking too. We love having 2 A-tier drivers, but at this point, maybe sacrifice Russell to someone a little bit lower, especially because of how high the sims are on Yuki and Antonelli. Get one of them up here and then bump Williams up to Mercedes.
Yeah. Especially you could even, if you drop Russell all the way down, it could even be McLaren and Ferrari as well, I believe. Yeah,
I think you could. Yeah, so I mean, I would look at that. I'd go George potentially into Kimi, and then you can bring in a McLaren Mercedes. I think with that build, looking at that, or like you say, go all the way down and go into a McLaren Ferrari build.
And I'll say none of these teams are bad in the middle and the right here. It's just the transfer penalties that make them so rough.
Yeah, I'm not sure what you'll get in points by taking out -20 when you can just do those couple of switches we just said and actually not occur any really from that Team 1 build. If you look at Team 1 build, you can make those two moves quite comfortably, sit with that Verstappen, Alonso, Sainz, Bortoleto team there, and just move those two and actually not lose any minus points in transfers.
I like it. All right, here's BZ, our friend Brian. Any other options besides the ones on the screen here?
Oh.
So we got McLaren, Mercedes in the first two, McLaren and V-Car, but oh my goodness, Verstappen and Norris in the last one.
And the McLaren in their mind.
Let's do some quick, quick math. I think where this is coming from is this gap is only 23. Norris is on for 30. Now all of a sudden the B tier constructor is outweighed by the A tier driver. This last one's not as crazy as it looks.
It's not. At first glance, you go, no. But then, like you say, that gap there, adding some driver of the day points potentially in there.
You got to believe in V-Carb. So they got to send at least one, if not both drivers into Q3. They've got to continue their run of getting at least 5, if not 10 points on the fastest pit stop bonuses just to keep pumping up that point total. So you need a few things to click for you. But if this is the 1-2, I think this team's going to be fine.
If I was to spruce things up just a little bit on this, I would give a vouch for Team 2 in the sense of if you haven't used extra if you've still got extra DRS left, you might actually still need to make sure you can get to a better extra DRS team for Qatar. So actually, you might not want to go for a Norris who looks set for a minus 0.3 or minus 0.1 and make sure that you're not messing about with that. However, I guess you could also say if V-Carb get what they need, they got 0.6 million and it works out that way as well. Oh,
it's tough because V-Carb's run of form's been poor, hasn't it? I think that's what's kind of throwing a question mark over that one, isn't it? But then they've actually looked quite solid this weekend again. And it's a track characteristically while he's looking at the car. If they can stay out of trouble in turn one, you'd expect them to, like Alan said, at least one of them to potentially get in the points in Q3 and that side of things, whichever one it will be. But I feel
it's a fair call by Zach because with Norris likely to go down 0.3 million, Russell, I think going up at least 0.1, but could with a good week go up 0.3 million. It's a bit of a swing if you still have that extra DRS boost ahead of you.
I would say, like, if you did go for Team 3, because it is the differential in hoping that Verstappen and Norris are just the top two, I probably also would put the 2 times on Norris if you were already going for that differential play over there, just to really try to get as many points as possible. Because at the end of the day, that's what that team would be. It would be the differential play. So I say go all in.
And keep us posted too, Brian. If this is one of the teams that I think you have a pretty high ranking team in the global league. I don't know if I would put my whole season into this team, especially considering you might have to get out of it for the sprint race in Brazil next weekend.
I would
probably, of course you would, Terry. I would probably go with something more modest with more pivot opportunities for Brazil. So I can see that too, depending on if you're chasing or if you're trying to cover.
Go for it, Brian. Go for Team 3.
Here's our friend Race Maven. Minus 10s across the board. And I think it's because Race Maven's trying to get out of McLaren. It's going to take a few moves to do it. Current team is Verstappen, Piastri, McLaren, V-Carb. So yeah, it looks like Race Maven's just trying to get out of some stuff. You could avoid the minus 10, bring Piastri down to an Antonelli kind of guy, and then try to get V-Carb up to a Mercedes. I don't know if you have to sacrifice more budget to do that, though. Let's see. Piastri to Antonelli is
Brian's on number 2. Oh.
And you need another million or 2 up here. So you would have to sacrifice a little bit more.
It's one of those hard teams where after FP2, it would have been fine doing one of these teams, but I just can't see a world now where where McLaren aren't the strongest ones heading out of qualifying, points-wise.
Yeah, and I'm still expecting more from Oscar, if I'm honest. I know from a fancy point of view where he's standing, a lot of people are pivoting away, but I don't know with Oscar. We've seen it since Baku, haven't we? Really, since that sort of downward turn. But you kind of expect it to click at some point, and traditionally he does get better as the weekend goes on. I know we're not seeing signs at the moment, but you kind of think that if he can hook it together and maybe get a good qualifying, and suddenly he brings himself back into the mix, doesn't he? And he's one, I think, where he's been written off straight away this weekend already after these practice sessions, which I'm not convinced by his ability to bounce back based on his current form, but I'm also not convinced by Oscar Piastri being in P5, P6 down the bottom and not having the same pole position in the race itself tomorrow. I'm not convinced of that either. I think that actually we don't know if they were doing different runs. We don't know if they were trying different things. We don't know if they were deliberately doing one or the other to try and find out what's going on with tyre wear and everything else, different setup maybe. There's no way of knowing in practice what actually they were doing with those two McLarens in terms of a side-by-side comparison. It's impossible to tell if they were running the same. So I don't think Oscar's a true representation of his pace either, going where he is.
And if I recall,
throw everybody in the mix.
And I think once everybody threw on the softs and did their qualifying sim, Oscar was one of the first ones, stamped it right to the top of the times. And there was a little bit of track evolution after that, so maybe his pace isn't as low as a P5, P6 as he might have seen.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we know there's no support races here. We know that it's a track that's dusty and will get better and better. If you think about qualifying, I think it'd be a case of last ones, out the box going in for that final run in Q3 potentially, because I think it will ramp up that much with all of the rubber being laid that whoever runs last will get a good position on it. So
I'd say,
yeah,
Race Maven, I'd say this. I think one of the things we all agree, I would say stick with at least McLaren. At worst, maybe a similar team to what you have here with Leclerc over Piastri if you're worried about him. If you want less exposure to Piastri instead of having the constructor and the driver. If you can get out of Piastri and get up to Mercedes, I don't know how much extra cost cap you'd have after all this. That'd be one way to do it. Or even rolling back this team, having a free transfer. This team will be good enough this week, and then you have the flexibility for Brazil. But it feels like McLaren's an asset you'd want to hold on to.
Yeah,
especially
definitely.
when you're dumping McLaren and taking a -10. It just feels like you're
I mean, I think that's the thing which is doing it for me. Dumping McLaren and taking a -10 just feels like it's not a worthy move. You've lost a -10 already, and then you think if McLaren actually get that together and get a couple of podium drivers, that -10 is going to feel even worse, then, isn't it? When you've dumped them off for one of these two. And like I said, I'm not convinced by Yuki in the sense of getting enough back and getting the points on that side of it for boosting Red Bull. I'm convinced on Max and his form, but I'm still got a question mark over Yuki from that point of view.
Gents, we've hit 100 likes. So thank you all very much for those likes.
Thank you.
As a special thank you, I'm going to flash my lineup.
That's literally what I'm getting prepared now.
I feel like I should have a drum roll.
I think we missed one or two of our member lineups, so I'll make sure we get back to it. Keep you all in suspense while this loads.
I was going to say, I didn't broadband's keeping the whole
screen. There we go. It is. It's a colorful one. So keeping Verstappen as my 2X driver was a no-brainer. For me, I want to roll that transfer. And the only way I could do that is Charles Leclerc or keeping Russell and having the exact same team as Coda. I think it's a matter of inches between one or the other, but I'm going to lean toward Charles Leclerc this week. Hope Mercedes does well enough to hold on. And then it's 3 transfers and some good budget options for Brazil.
That looks remarkably familiar.
Interesting. Let me see this team.
Terry, have you locked yours in yet?
I have, yeah.
I can say I've just done mine as well, so I think we're all there.
It did the same for me. Adam, you had a nice bit of buffering when you went on Gonna Flash. It was quite funny actually.
Zach with the catchphrase, risk it for a bloody chocolate biscuit. Look at this thing.
Yeah,
So we're just hoping Alpine survives. I've got Gasly, you've got Colapinto, Sainz and Alonso.
Honestly,
it's hard to ignore them. Alonso with the cost cap gains, Sainz with the 5-place grid penalty, and then look at the top of that team. It's awesome.
It's frustrating Mercedes as a constructor because I was like 0.6 million off. And basically, if Alonso just kept it together last weekend, I probably could have got to McLaren Ferrari with this team. But that's a that's a rant for another day. But I just feel like it's now time for the extra DRS hasn't gone my way. If I want to get top 1,000, I need to go a little bit against the grain. And from what I've seen, the Norris 2 times is backed up by the sims, and a lot of people aren't going for it. So I'm saying, screw it, why not? And also, one thing a lot of people are talking about is the Leclerc-Russell debate. But here's the thing. I had free transfers heading into Mexico. So I still have free transfers heading into Brazil with this team. So worst case scenario, if this team doesn't work out, I can move away from it straight away. So that's why I feel like this is a very good time to risk it. And I'm excited for it.
Race Maven's excited for it because we just got a super chat. Thank you, Race Maven. Hopefully we helped you. If you have any other questions or ideas about that lineup as you fine tune, how do you keep McLaren, and do let us know in the chat. We're happy to help. All right, Terry, is your team posted too?
It is.
All right. Ooh, you put your 2X driver on the second line, and I thought you went really bananas. I thought Charles Leclerc was getting the 2X.
That's just where Max was from last week. Don't worry.
So Zach and Terry will be doing their voodoo dance for Pierre Gasly and hoping that Colapinto is the surviving Alpine this weekend. But otherwise, the exact same team. So the Leclerc Mercedes split for all three of us.
And that is purely why I've also got enough to final fix out Max for Lando if I need to as well.
Well, that's key.
Which I did that by accident.
But it's important though, because this is such a short circuit. They were talking about this in free practice as well. You're going to have a lot of these drivers queuing up in the stadium. You might have some traffic. You might have some impeding, one track limits. And then all of a sudden you could have a top driver out in Q1 and you might need some of that flexibility on the final fix.
Yeah. Just to answer quickly, Sainz is in there purely for the budget and moving the transfer. Alonso's pretty much the same as well. So they're drivers that are already in there. So it was one of those where it's the same with Max. I could have swapped, like I say, I could have swapped Max to Lando, but it would have meant another -10 to be fair. This one cost me -10 to pivot out to get into this anyway. So it felt -20 was too much for me. So I can final fix it if I need to. I probably would have liked to have gone Lando over Max still from how strong he's looked, but I'm quite happy with this one.
Guys, question from Lucas in the chat. We like Leclerc over Russell. We've all done the same move, but is it worth taking it for a -10?
I don't think so. No.
Agreed. Rick has been
I had a
patient.
straight swap between the two. So for me, it was like when I made the move, I basically had that option to do either sat on there. So I went a bit like you were saying at the top of the show, Adam, where I wanted to just spread my bets a little bit more and get a piece of Ferrari in some form. I couldn't afford it as a constructor, so I thought actually put Charles Leclerc in there. Then actually, if a podium or good result, it's fine. If George happens to do better than him, I'm going to pick it up from the Mercedes points, that side of things. So that was my thinking of going with Charles over George purely on that basis of just spreading it a bit more.
My thoughts exactly.
I will say, because that sort of comes back to the point we were talking about before, because we don't think it's going to be too much of a difference between Leclerc and Russell. We do think Leclerc will be the higher one. That also then comes to a lot of people were talking about the extra transfer and stuff. Brazil, a very important weekend for a lot of people chips wise, depending if you're playing autopilot, extra DRS, limitless, actually not for limitless, but all of the other ones, what not. Then potentially you'd want to have a look at keeping Russell just because it's not worth even having a free transfer, taking that hit potentially if you are planning something big for Brazil. But if you're happy to keep Leclerc, then it's okay to move over to him.
Guys, we missed Rebecca's.
While you're doing that, I just want to look at somebody. Borsaletta and Hadja, they're a coin toss between them, to be honest, in terms of chances of going up.
Yeah.
yeah, again, so I think my feeling on those is don't try and move one of those into. If you've got one of them, it's fine. But I'm not too sure I'll be making a transfer to swap them and losing that transfer somewhere along the line. I think you're best either rolling it or keeping it for something else if you've got those two.
We've had a message that actually pretty much sums it up perfectly from I don't even know, where they've asked Bortoletto and save on transfer or Alonso, and that's exactly it. It's better to save a transfer than go from a Bortoletto to an Alonso. So that's why you'll see all of us favouring someone like Alonso, because we all had Alonso. But you'll see other teams who have a Lawson and they'll keep him because they just already had Lawson, etc. It's nothing. Yeah, it's nothing because we think they're 10 times better.
And also Bortoletto going into a home race where you could have that cheap driver of the day because it's a
driver of the day.
Sort of thing. Absolutely. I can see that happening.
Oh, right. Without a shadow of a doubt.
We got a member question and a member lineup to review. Let's start with Rebecca's lineup here on the screen. Max and Leclerc. But is it Red Bull or Mercedes? Looks like the Tier B drivers are the same here. So it's really just a matter of, do we trust Red Bull enough?
Not over Mercedes. If you can get to that team too, for me, I think that's an easy switch.
And second team allows her to roll a transfer.
Even better then.
Or you could bump up Gasly with the second. I think
that's what she's saying there. Who would you bump up Gasly to? Just trying to think who would actually. There isn't that many on the cusp of. I'd say if there was a certain budget gain in there, it might have been worth it, but I'm not too sure with Gasly.
No, Gasly, it's just that you can't go down at this point, no matter what.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Preserving that 136.
I would probably go with transfer.
I think I'd agree.
Yeah.
Like you said, Terry, about Tsunoda as well. It doesn't look like potentially we're as confident in him as possible. Even after all of that, are we as confident with Verstappen winning the race? And I think with all of these unknowns, it's worth, especially when we're planning for Brazil, sprint race, big race weekend, to just roll that transfer and make sure you can get out of anything. Because realistically, I think having Leclerc is more of the one where we need to be careful of being able to get rid of, or even having Verstappen now, because we don't know who's going to be the top team / driver heading into each race weekend now, realistically.
Yeah.
Guys, I'm going to jump in because poor Rick has heeded our advice. He's given us a few options where he's keeping McLaren. He's got Mercedes, but he needs our help with 15 minutes left here. Verstappen, Tsunoda, Behrman, Bortoletto, Alonso, McLaren, Red Bull, or Verstappen, Antonelli, Bortoletto, Alonso, Gasly, McLaren, Mercedes. So it's Tsunoda, Bortoletto, Red Bull versus Antonelli, Gasly, Mercedes.
I would probably go the second one. I think Antonelli going up and Mercedes points for me would be the one I'd go for.
It's that -10, isn't it?
But
Rick's options were -20 and -30, so this is a gift compared to his original.
I mean, they're -10 on both. I think if you take a -10, I think the second team.
True.
For me.
Yeah, if it's a -10 on both, it's definitely second team.
Yeah, second team, Rick.
And for me, it comes down to you're gonna double dip on Tsunoda with the constructor or double dip on Antonelli with the constructor. I trust Kimi a little bit more this week. Awesome, Rick. Hopefully that helped. If you haven't locked in your lineups yet, make sure you do that.
Now, this isn't... sorry, Adam, I was about to ask that question as well. That's actually a really interesting one, because I don't think it's as simple as a swap move, Bortoletto to Tsunoda.
So it looks like there's lots of extra cost cap happening here, because Bortoletto's at 6.7, Yuki at 10.2, so 3.5 million extra. A few things to think of here. If you have final fix, you could, if you still have final fix, you can hold the transfer and have more flexibility with your 2x driver getting final fixed out. But man, I'd hate to have that much money hanging around when you could just drop Tsunoda and see what happens.
See, I would probably drop Tsunoda, doing that. but then, like you say, do you want Bortoletto for Brazil? They don't have.
Someone doesn't have final fix.
Yeah.
I'm so steadfast about having the extra transfer for Brazil. I'm leaning Bortoleto, but I wouldn't hate you if you picked Sonoda because the points do look good.
That is really hard. Yeah. No,
I
think I'd hold my horses and save the extra transfer.
think if you save an extra transfer and you got Bortoleto going into Brazil and the extra transfer.
Well, here's the thing, because heading into Brazil, like I've been saying, there's a potential chance that we could be having to move one of the constructors, your two times, a B-tier driver that's crashed, and that's already 3 drivers instantly that you need to change in your team. So it might be worth keeping those 3 transfers.
We got a lot of this or that questions in the chat now.
Norris, we need to hit some of those off.
Norris or Verstappen, we are house divided. Zach is going for Norris. Terry and I are going for Verstappen. I don't think there's a wrong answer between the two.
Yeah, I will say, I was going to say, because on my Norris divide, it is a lot to do as well, just because of I need that differential to get my season back on track for top 1,000 after that extra DRS use, which is a big reason as to why I've risked it over there.
And I think it's a smart differential. It's not like you're throwing caution to the wind and giving Lewis your 2x. It's the next most likely driver, if not Verstappen. Wait, someone just said, so Alonso out. Is something happening?
I don't know. I've looked. What's Rebecca's question? I've seen pop up a couple of times there.
Oh, that better not be the case. Oh, actually, if it is, I've still got time to change him out. I've got 1 extra transfer.
We all have 1 extra transfer. What is happening to get to Fernando Alonso?
You do that. I'll keep looking at Fernando.
Okay. All right. Should I switch Williams to V-carb or save a transfer? Oh, that's really close.
That's a tough one, isn't it? Because Williams, you'd expect to get some pace around here at some point, wouldn't you?
Let's see. Let's look at the cost cap situation. Is it any better for them? I guess it depends. Could you use the money? Because it is probably a 0.5 to 0.7 million difference between them. If you could use the money, I would make the switch. Top 3 tier B drivers, Hakan. Well, I like the 2 expensive ones, Sonoda and Antonelli. I like Behrman, high overtake circuit for the overtake leader. I like Sainz coming back from a 5-place grid penalty. Those are all totally fine.
Honestly, I'd potentially, if we're talking top 5, I'd potentially even put Colapinto in there just because of him being a holding asset, and now he can finally potentially get a 0.2 increase, which is huge.
Yeah, it's wild. He was something like 2 seconds back off the pace in FP3, so he's gonna just be by himself for a long time.
Yeah.
Final thoughts. It's really going to come down to how things look in Q1. We could have at least 1 shocker because this is a circuit where you could have something like that. It's going to be, unless something really crazy happens between Verstappen and Norris, and then all eyes are on Piastri. Can he claw back some of his lead and get some momentum?
Can he get some form? I'm seeing nothing on Alonso having a problem, so I think that's a genuine. I think someone's just asking if they should transfer them out rather than Alonso out.
Saves us
at the moment. Yeah. So take out Alonso for Behrman. Not sure that's not sure it's worth a transfer.
Yeah, it's a sideways transfer.
Yeah,
it's close. Yeah, one more likely to gain value. The other one probably going to get a little bit more on the points front, but looks like the Sims aren't terribly happy with Haas, despite the overtake nature of the circuit. Haas's strong form last year.
Yeah.
Question in the chat: would you keep Mercedes with the extra transfer, or if you do have the money, go over to Ferrari, but then you're down to 2 free transfers for Brazil? I would be tempted to say the without the extra transfer, because I will admit, if I had enough money to go Mercedes to Ferrari, I would have done that on my own team.
I would trust Ferrari here more if I could go to it. I just couldn't make it work.
So yeah, I think
I would be okay with it. And I looked ahead to recent Brazil history. They've gotten hard done by a few DNFs at Brazil, but Ferrari's pretty good there. So I wouldn't mind keeping or putting Ferrari in.
Matt, I would probably just roll 2 times Alpine, upgrade Gasly. If you avoid turn 1, it's quite a low DNF track from that point of view. So I'm not too sort of where you'd go with it. I would probably say just roll it. If you're in the position, you've got both Alpines anyway.
You're going to need some antacids in the house with both Alpines.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't watch the race live if you didn't.
Shadev's actually brought up something I forgot to talk about, which is important for Alonso. Yeah, definitely. Where they said leave Alonso for this race, then replace in Brazil. Because one thing we haven't mentioned is obviously Alonso's going to lose those 30 points from Singapore and he'll keep his negatives from Kota. But at the end of the day, that's an issue for another time if you've got the rest of your team sorted. So it shouldn't matter too much for now.
Lucas, I'll probably stay with Russell if you've got him in there rather than transfer him out. I think any move to you'll probably look at a Charles move for that. I'm not sure it's worth a sideways transfer if you've already got him there.
Ooh, got a question with just 9 minutes left. Current budget's 130.6 million. Limitless and wildcard available. Current team is Piastri, Verstappen, Sainz, Alonso, Lawson, with McLaren, Williams.
Go Piastri to Norris, which forces VCARB.
Hey, we haven't talked about this, and I don't know if this is a crazy thought. I don't hate Limitless this weekend.
No, it's an all right time to use it. It's like another one where it's just so individual, where it's like, do you still have extra DRS, no negative, autopilot, all of these chips? Because realistically, those are going to hold a higher ground than Limitless now coming into these sprint race weekends. And if you've still got them, then Limitless is a great option here. But let's say you don't have those, then you could probably risk it and then just use Limitless in Brazil.
I'm going to be a little bold on Limitless this weekend, because if it's wet in Brazil, it might not be as obvious who the top drivers and constructors are. Then you're going to Vegas, which is a cold pro Mercedes circuit. Then we're heading into the last 2 races. And like Zach said, depending on your other chips, you might run out of time to use it effectively. So that could be one way to get out of the conundrum you're in now.
Whole Bortoleto transfer to Alonso. I wouldn't transfer Bortoleto to Alonso. I'd keep him.
Ooh, a validating point from last year's champ Leapfrog. Andrew used Limitless on his mini league team, which means he rates it as a better use versus Brazil in Las Vegas.
Oh, there you go.
I trust the math guys, and Andrew is a math guy. Ooh, Yusuf wants to know Leclerc or Piastri.
Ooh.
Any other week, I would say Piastri, but I get if you've had him the last few weeks and you're just sick of him hurting you, and you want to go to someone safe like Charles Leclerc, right?
If you're going to switch for Charles Leclerc, I think this is a weekend to do it. Is probably what I would say.
I don't know. Piastri hasn't shown enough yet.
When we all switch to it, Piastri will end up with pole, fastest lap, driver of the day. You guarantee we've all pivoted away from him. It's going to happen.
But can you imagine how mad you'd be after these last 2 weeks of Piastri? We say, oh yeah, hold on to him. And he just has himself another terrible week.
Goes off into the sunset, Pole,
depressing.
Fastest lap, pit stops, everything.
Rebecca has a question for you, Zach. She can do Norris over Verstappen like you, but it stops her from rolling a transfer into Brazil. Is that worth it?
I would keep Max.
Yeah, this is such. I was gonna thank you, Terry, for that, because I was gonna say a cop-out answer realistically there, where it was like it's personal preference there, because that is literally a flip of a coin.
It is. I think it's one of those where you're going to get it either way, aren't you? It's either going to be a fantastic move, or you're going to be kicking yourself if you didn't make it.
Ooh, sick putts. Good question. Is Max getting a 5-place grid penalty in Brazil? I don't think. We shared this on our show earlier this week. I don't think he's eligible yet. I don't think he's at the limit of any of his engine parts. But yeah, I mean, you saw what he did last year. He tore through the field in Brazil.
I don't think that would be a major problem if he did, with the sprint and everything and the way it's done. Norris and Lewis or Max and Leclerc. Wow.
So
I'll probably go Max and Leclerc.
I just can't ever go with Lewis the way his qualifying form's been this year. It makes me
Lewis
so
is
sad. I
Adam.
want to run Lewis. I've run Lewis in some capacity every year we've done this. I just can't do it this year.
I must admit, I went to put Lewis in and went back out of it. Oh, limitless constructors, Joseph, flip a coin. Honestly, I would probably go McLaren and Ferrari.
Yeah,
If
I'd agree with that.
it's would be where I would go with limitless, but I don't think you'd be far wrong if you went for Mercedes in there. But I would say if I could, like Zach was saying, if I could, I would have gone into Ferrari.
So many people keep talking about Alonso. I'm starting to get a little bit of anxiety that we're rocking up to a -5 in qualifying. So if anybody has any information on Alonso, I'm not aware of any information except everybody stoking some fires in the chat.
That's the danger of being on live, isn't it? We're not seeing anything from.
Yeah.
This has happened to me before though, where Pierre Gasly is just parked in the middle of the track and where I've locked in my team already.
I mean, Aston Martin got pictures of him in the car, so I'm kind of, but then they could be old pictures.
It's a smoke screen.
Yeah, after seeing their media pool, they could well be the ones from yesterday, so they look highly familiar. So,
Red Bull or Ferrari? We vote Ferrari if you're using a transfer. If you have Red Bull on your team already, I think they're close enough where I wouldn't use the transfer. Limitless drivers. So I think we can all agree on Norris, Verstappen, Leclerc, and Russell. And then it's probably Piastri.
Yeah, I think you'd still have to go Piastri, yeah. Because out of every one of the it's Hamilton, Antonelli, Piastri, and I'll be nice to Sonoda. The one who could cause a big qualifying upset realistically would only be Piastri.
McLaren and Ferrari. Pivot to McLaren and Ferrari from McLaren Mercedes or roll a transfer.
I think it's the go to McLaren Ferrari. Like we mentioned, if we could afford it, we would have done it.
I couldn't. This has happened to me a lot this year where my budget restrains me from getting into something and that something ends up having a disaster. So it's working. Regarding Alonso, vibrations from FP3 team says no problems.
There you go.
Thank you, Josh.
I wasn't seeing anything. When you're looking for something and you're thinking, I can't see it.
Lawson or Sainz?
Whichever one you already have.
Yeah, look at that. Look at the expected points difference here. Lawson's or Sainz? You pick. We support you.
2 minutes to go. Ooh.
Limitless. Who gets the 2x? Depends. The conventional thinking is Max, but there's nothing wrong with Lando. And you can see he's pulling away on the sim up here. They're neck and neck on betting lines. Nothing wrong with Lando either. So it's really just vibes at this point. Is Max so locked in that he's unstoppable, or can Norris get it back?
So there you go. So Fernando had a problem with the front axle in the right wheel, but it's been fixed.
Fantastic.
There you
go. That's good news.
Everyone can breathe now. We're on to make laugh.
After last week, can we just have an easy race where everything works out for everybody?
It'd be nice, wouldn't it?
To see another day.
It would be nice. Would be nice. I think that's it, isn't it? Are we?
Yes. We're down to the last minute, so absolutely make sure your lineups are locked. Thank you all so very much for watching, and we have a very special Brazilian Grand Prix preview in store for you in 2 weeks, so make sure you check that out. Until then, enjoy the racing. Good luck.
Good luck.
Take care, everyone.